Hi everybody, we are going to get started with a new project that guides us to learning about an artist named Henri Matisse, and he was a very famous artist in the 20th century, and in the later part of his life he started using cut paper, and hopefully you've watched the video I provided too. It's great information on his cutouts and his process for that, and you also get to see the size of his work. Some of his cutouts were really big, and that's fun to look at, but it's the video will show you some of that, those large pieces. He used a lot of bright colors and fun shapes in his work. He thought of it as cutting out with the paper. He thought of as painting with paper, and his scissors would create the line for the shapes of his work. He also used two principles of design that we have to use in our work, and that is pattern, which is repeating colors and shapes over and over again, and unity. Unity is when you put all the parts of your work together, all the pieces of your project or your composition together, so they look like they belong together. So we're going to practice using his technique of paper cutouts. I'm going to ask that you think of the theme of this week, which is springtime, or spring is in the air. The weather's changing, the flowers are starting to come out. I want you to use spring as your inspiration for this piece, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that next. All right, so our materials today are going to be a piece of white paper. I had a larger piece of paper available to me. I wanted to kind of practice and show you what it might look like as a larger piece. You saw in the video Matisse painted so large, some of his pieces went from the floor to the ceiling. I don't have a piece of paper quite that large, and maybe you don't have a large piece of paper either. If you want to explore doing a larger piece, you could tape smaller pieces of paper together to make a larger piece. That would be a great alternative. You're also going to need to find some colored papers. I have some colored papers, some construction papers, but I did not have a green. And so I wanted to make sure I used green because our theme is spring, and I am seeing a lot of green out there. So I had a piece of artwork. We talked about this before, where we can use old work to create new work. And so I had an old print with some green. And I also had some more tissue paper in this nice spring green. So I'm going to use some of those materials as well. If you don't have colored paper, you could also make colored paper to cut out. Matisse actually used papers that he painted. I'm not sure if you caught this in the video, but he had assistants. We don't have assistants, so we'll have to paint our own paper if you want to do it that way. Or you could use crayons and color a white piece of paper different colors and then cut that out. So there's lots of ways you can get some different colors of paper. You're also going to need scissors, a pencil, and of course some glue. I use Mod Podge. This is just what I have at home. You are welcome to use whatever you have. Regular school glue or glue stick will do the trick. So those are your materials. Go ahead and collect your things, and then I'll be back to show you the process. All right, so I'm going to start with this beautiful color of pink that I have here, almost a fuchsia. And I'm going to explore different shapes in different ways. I'm going to copy some of Matisse's shapes that I see from his work. And I'm also going to use some shapes that I notice in my own yard, in my own space. and try and create some shapes from those. I'm also going to look at the colors that I'm seeing outside in my springtime walks and my yard, and I'm starting to see some of my fruit trees starting to bloom, and the tips of some of the flowers that are starting to come up are quite pink. So I tend to like to sketch out my designs first before I start cutting them. I'm going to use one of Matisse's shapes that I see in his work a lot, and it's sort of this fun leafy shape. And he has lots of different versions of those. Maybe I'm trying to also think about pattern. So maybe I need this shape more than one time to kind of create a pattern with the shape and the color here. And then I will cut them out. Okay, so you can see I've got a whole lot of things cut out here. I have my pink little shapes that I started with, and now I've built some different shapes. I've used the different types of paper. Here's my green papers that I showed you. I also wanted to share with you that don't forget that negative space can always also make a shape. So this came out of this piece, right? And then when I pulled it out, I noticed, well, that's interesting too. And if I put the blue behind it, it's like its own other thing. And then I can take this piece and create some unity, because they look like they go together even though they're separate. And I'm just gonna kind of arrange my pieces so that they look like they go together, right? Like we talked about. So I'm kind of liking the way that this is set up now. If I didn't like it, I might play around with where to put this. There's a lot of pink there. Maybe I'll have it go the opposite way. That's kind of interesting. So once you have your composition ready, you're thinking about color, you're thinking about shape, you're thinking about patterns, repeating a shape and color. You're thinking about unity, so things that look like they all belong together even though they might be in different spaces. So you can do that with color too. See, I have the blue coming through all the way on this side. I have the pink repeatedly happening in different shapes that kind of looks like they belong all together. All right, and then I'm just gonna take my glue and I start gluing on those pieces, and I will come back when I have everything glued on and show you my final piece. All right, so I went ahead and I glued on all those pieces pretty much where I decided I wanted them. Of course, you can always change things around. I ended up adding some stripes on my cattails. I just thought that brought in the yellow a little bit, and I liked the way that looked. And I'm gonna not forget to sign it. Just like with every piece, sign your work. You can put the year so you remember what year you made your artwork. All right, so have fun. This should be a fun experience. I look forward to seeing your work. You can share it on Flipgrid, you can email me, all those things. So have a great week.